We can tap into what motivates them when they need that little push or when they're up against the challenge, right? And so this is so important whenever it comes to understanding how to manage in this new way of working, right? Because it's not an assembly line approach for a lot of employees anymore. That's been gone for a while. But even in those cases, it doesn't matter what the environment is, in the sense of, it doesn't matter if it's a factory or blue collar, white collar, knowledge worker, whatever the case is. Whenever you understand what motivates and inspires your employee, or what it is that they want to achieve, what it is that is important to them, then you can tap into the full potential of that worker. And whenever you're able to do that, the engagement is increased. Like they talk about higher satisfaction and performance. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Future of Work Weekly Report. We are fresh and rejuvenated for 2025, and we're ready to go ahead and kick off this week's Future of Work Weekly Report with an article from UNLEASH, and it's written by Kelly Mackin, human behavior expert and best-selling author, where she's going to tackle the title here of only 16% of people are thriving at work. Here are 5 strategies to change that in 2025. So we're just going straight into it. No time for the fluff. So let's go ahead and start with highlight number 1, and then we'll dive into our thoughts as well. Number 1, workplace well-being crisis. So Kelly is saying that from the survey of 5,000 participants, only 16% of employees are thriving at work. And she says, despite various initiatives to improve workplace well-being, most efforts are not delivering the results needed to combat widespread burnout and disengagement. Now, I recently wrote a LinkedIn post somewhat related to this. It was about return to office and why does this debate even exist? And it's not necessarily what you think it might be. It's not because people don't necessarily want to go to the office. It's not because of the commute. It's not because of the perks. It's not because of, you name it. It's really not because of that. It's because the traditional 9-to-5 office was broken before the pandemic, meaning that the power imbalance was so unbalanced to an unhealthy extent, meaning that if you were a leader, you had the authority, you had the power, and the employee feared what the repercussions would be if they even asked a question, sometimes if they went outside of the normal approach to working, right? And so that is where we're actually coming from. And the reason that I bring that up is because we can see that there's something that needs to change beyond just implementing and improving the workplace well-being initiatives, right? It has to be a combination of a few things, and leadership being the most important here, because we can't continue to hold on to outdated leadership approaches. We need to change or redefine the ways that we work. So to continue this conversation, let's go ahead and go into number 2, which is strategies to tackle burnout in 2025, because it's relative to the leadership part. And what she calls out here is that we need to lead with motive mindset. So she calls this out in a way that I haven't heard of before, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Thriving employees are driven by 28 core psychological, emotional, and social needs that shape their well-being and performance. Leaders must go beyond buzzwords like belonging and purpose to understand these needs and create environments that support them. So basically what she's saying here is that we can't just talk a good game anymore. We actually have to play the game well, and we have to play it to the strengths and the things that the employees actually want. And they're not all the same. And that's where she comes in here and talks about embrace motive diversity. Workplaces must respect the diverse motives motives of all employees, recognizing that one person's need for security might conflict with another's need for growth. The key is balancing these diverse needs through open communication and compromise. And this is where the 28 motives, I think she calls it circumplex. And actually, I'm going to share my screen so we can look at this together before we continue. So let me just make sure that I share the right screen. So what we're looking at here is the 28. So if you count all of these on the side of the left and the side of the right, they equal 28. And what she's saying is that these are the things that we need to tap into, these motive mindsets. What motivates the employee? Is it achievement, personal strengths, clear expectations? If that's the case, then they're focused on success, peer appreciation, company appreciation, self-esteem. They're focused on significance. And so you can continue to run down this and see what's going on here, right? I mean, the big thing right now is flexibility. So flexibility, autonomy, free expression, that's going to be freedom. They're focused on freedom. And if you look at these motives, you could probably find ways to tap into these during the interview process, or it is the beginning of the year. This is the perfect time to have this conversation with your employees and really find out what matters most to them. And the more that you understand what it is that matters to them as an employee, you're going to be able to manage them so much better than you would if you didn't do this exercise, right? And so I just wanted to share this because I'm a visual person, and just hearing 28 motives is overwhelming a little bit. But if you actually see it and you break it down here, you can kind of piece together how you can implement this into your organization. But it's not all one size fits all, right? Because somebody might have success, but then they also have freedom. And then they also have personal connection mixed with stimulation, or balance mixed with success, right? It's this plethora of diversity that she's talking about. And so what we need to tap into is, how do we understand our employees better? And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and get back to it. But I think that we can understand what our employees' wants and needs are through, like she said, open conversation and compromise. And number three, highlight number three, which is human-centered leadership, right? And so she says thriving at work happens when leaders take a human-centered approach. And some of the ways that she calls this out is meaningful one-on-one conversations, asking thoughtful questions, and tailoring support to employees' specific needs will foster that trust and engagement, leading to higher satisfaction and performance. So we've talked about this in previous Future of Work weekly reports, and it's really just tapping into, who are your employees? What do they want? And there's only one way to do this, and it's to ask them, and it's to listen, right? And I feel like a lot of leaders in today's age are so focused on the work that needs to get done that they forget that the person is actually a person beyond an employee. And I know that that sounds counterintuitive, but if we take the time to better understand our employees, we can tap into their full potential. We can tap into what motivates them when they need that little push, or when they're up against the challenge, right? And so this is so important whenever it comes to understanding how to manage in this new way of working, right? Because it's not an assembly line approach for a lot of employees anymore. That's been gone for a while. But even in those cases, it doesn't matter what the environment is, in the sense of, it doesn't matter if it's a factory or blue collar, white collar, knowledge worker, whatever the case is. Whenever you understand what motivates and inspires your employee, or what it is that they want to achieve, what it is that is important to them, then you can tap into the full potential of that worker. And whenever you're able to do that, the engagement is increased. Like they talk about higher satisfaction and performance. There's actually a specific example that I want to talk about. I'll try to keep it quick, but whenever was in my first leadership role, it was at a staffing firm, and my manager and his manager gave me 5 of the lowest performing people in the organization. And there's a whole story behind that. We won't go into it, but basically what they were doing were they were giving me the lowest performers and basically trying to drive me out, thinking that I wouldn't be successful with it. But I took a different approach than their micromanagement style that they used. And I actually used servant leadership and personal leadership. And I didn't know it at the time, but possibly a motive leadership approach, where this one specific person was kind of checked out. You could see that he was coming in, punching the clock, and then leaving, and I sat him down one day in one of our one-on-ones, and I said, "Hey man, what's going on? Like, I can tell that you're a little bit checked out and maybe you don't want to be here." And I was like, "That's totally fine, right? Like, if that's the answer, that's totally fine. But I just want to, like, what's going on?" And he said, "I have my wife, we need benefits, and I need to be here." And then I said, "What is it that you want to do? Like, in a perfect world, in the most aspirational sense, what would be your dream?" And he said, "Opening my own gym and being able to run that and be successful with it." And I said, "Okay, so that's not going to happen tomorrow. But what are some of the things that you can learn in this position that will help you become a great gym owner?" Right? And so some of the things that we tapped into was sales. He has to be able to talk to people. And so whenever they come into the gym, he has to be able to be opening, be welcoming, convince them that this is the gym that they should go to. Right? And so we tapped into that skill set, that he's going to focus on sales to be able to take that and apply it into the role of being a gym owner. And then we continued to go down this path, right? And so what was amazing was I did this for all of the 5 that I was managing, and every single person of the 5 became either performing or top performers. And it was all because of the style of leadership that tapped into, it wasn't me necessarily, but it was the leadership that tapped into what motivated them. And they became completely different employees. The job didn't change, but the way that they thought about it changed. The way that I talked to them about it changed. And so that is something so simple. And we also created clarity too. Like, these are the goals that we shoot for. And so those things really tapped into those people understanding what it was that they could do in the moment, whether or not they wanted to be there, to improve themselves for a later purpose, right? And so leadership doesn't always have to be forever, in the sense of, like, you can coach these people out if that is their goal, right? Hopefully that tied into what we're talking about. But let's go ahead and get back on track here with highlight number 4, which is proactive well-being strategies. Instead of reacting to issues when they've already escalated, leaders need to embed preventative well-being measures into the daily work environment. Identifying emotional triggers such as feelings of insecurity or overwhelm early on can help prevent burnout and disengagement. Now, one of the things that come to my mind is I've been in organizations where rifts or reduction in forces have happened. And it always sets this bit of insecurity. Is my job stable anymore? Right? And so one of the things that you can do after, and I'm just using this as an example because it's what I know, but after a rift, what you can then do is have a conversation with the team, the company, and then the individuals, and say, look, I understand that this is scary and it might be something that makes it feel like this job isn't stable right now, but what we've done to ensure that we don't continue on this path is that, one, we've done XYZ, maybe it's tools, maybe it's operating expenses, maybe it's whatever the case is. And then the other part is the actual people that were unfortunately let go. And we can say the people that we let go, we thought hard about this and we made the tough decision to let them go. And instead of doing this as a staggered approach, we ripped the Band-Aid off and let go of a certain amount of people that allows us to now focus on what we need to accomplish as a team, as individuals, as a company. Now, if that's the approach that you took, then you can say that. And psychologically, it can help a little bit. Maybe it won't help at all. It depends on the person, but it's all about that transparency and the integrity that you have as a leader to communicate this to the team. And not only communicate it, you need to open it up for questions and really dive into the person's concerns. And that's what they're talking about here, is identifying those emotional triggers, such as feelings of insecurity or overwhelm. And so whenever you're tapping into that preventatively, then you're allowing the burnout or disengagement or the fear of security not being there kind of not fall to the wayside, but at least allow them to focus on what they need to focus on. And then still being there as a supportive actor along the way, right? So if they have questions 2 months down the road, or they hear a little bit of rumors, they can come to you specifically. If you say that your door is open, your virtual door is open, then they can come and talk to you too. So it gives that feeling of support and preventative care. And then let's go ahead and wrap this up with highlight number 5, which is actually creating a well-being action plan. So Kelly calls out here, a comprehensive action plan for 2025 includes gathering employees' input through surveys and discussions, challenging limiting beliefs, and reevaluating policies that don't align with employees' needs. Small changes often have the greatest impact, but bold moves are also necessary for transformation. So basically what she's calling out here is, don't just go off on a whim and kind of like the last highlight, don't just react, be proactive in the approach of the well-being action plan. And this could mean that you open up the HR team to almost be kind of like counselors if they're open to that and they have the skills for that. But it's allowing these people in your organization, your employees, to understand that you are actually hearing what they say and you're taking it into account, and you're not only just listening, you're actually taking action. We did this in the last company I worked for as a full-time employee, where HR conducted the employee engagement survey, and then we actually took the results of the employee survey, prioritized them, and then we put them into our OKRs. So HR was specifically tied to implementing the actions of the results of the survey. And that created trust and transparency among the entire team. And I'm going to tell you, it was one of the best companies that I've ever worked for from a culturalistic perspective. And we were 100% remote, right? So these things that Kelly mentions here, and some of the inputs that I added as well, are ways that you can really kick off 2025 with a strong start and a human first or a human centric approach to your 2025 plan, to make sure that you're not one of the 16%, or your employees aren't one of the 16% that aren't thriving, or actually the opposite, the 84% of the workers that aren't thriving, right? So I hope that this Future of Work weekly report was beneficial to you. If it was, I'll be that YouTuber again. Like, subscribe, share with anybody out there that you think would be or find this beneficial, and make sure to check out the Future of Work, a weekly report, consolidated 2025 white paper that we have on our website. But that's all that I have from here. I will attach the article, as always, in the description. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments, or if you want that link directly to the report on our website, reach out to me as well in the comments. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.